7 years after the 1990 Captain America movie with Matt Salinger came out, Marvel was in negotiations with Mark Gordon and Gary Levinson to produce the film, and Larry Wilson and Leslie Bohem were set to write the script. Marvel teamed up with Arts and Entertainment to help finance the film in May 2000. However, a lawsuit arose between Marvel Comics and Joe Simon over the ownership of Captain America copyrights, disreputing the development process of the film, so eventually settled in September 2003. Following the event, Marvel was preparing to license the film rights to Warner Bros. Until producer David Maisel suggested that the company produce the film themselves. In 2005, Marvel received $526 million investment from Merrill Lynch, allowing them to independently produce 10 films, including Captain America. Paramount Pictures agreed to buy the rights for the film. This movie is originally a standalone. Kevin Feige, the producer, said about half the movie would be set during World War II before moving into modern day. Avi Arad said the biggest opportunity with Captain America is as a man out of time, coming back today, looking at our world through the eyes of someone who thought the perfect world was small-town United States. 60 years go by, and who are we today? Are we better? The inspiration was taken from Back to the Future trilogy, and someone in mind to be the star, and definitely someone in mind to be the director. Jon Favreau was originally to direct the film, but he chose to do Iron Man instead. In April 2006, David Self was hired to write the script and said that Captain America was his favourite superhero as a child because his dad said to him, "You could one day be Captain America," which is nice. Joe Johnston confirmed to direct the movie, and apparently Captain America was put on hold during the 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild of America strike. Although Marvel Entertainment reached interim comprehensive agreement with the Writers Guild of America that would put writers immediately back to work on various projects that were under the company's development in January 2008, Marvel announced the film to be titled Captain America: The First Avenger for release on 6th of May 2011, before being pushed back to July the 22nd. Louis Leterrier looked at some of the concept art being created for the film and was impressed enough to offer his services, but he was turned down by Marvel, so Johnston directed the film instead. He hired Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely to rewrite. Kevin Feige said Johnston's directional work on October Sky and Rocket Eater and his special effects work on the original Star Wars trilogy to explain why he has appropriate choice. They took inspiration from Raiders of the Lost Ark because they hoped the film would not feel like a period piece. Kevin said Marvel is perceived pretty well around the world right now, and he thinks that putting another uber Marvel hero into the worldwide box office would be a good thing. They have to deal with much the same way that Captain America, when thawed from the Arctic ice, entered a world that he didn't recognize, after being asked whenever anti-US sentiments would affect the film's box office, similar to the way Stan Lee and Jack Kirby reintroduced the character in the 1960s. Avi Arad said Captain America stands for freedom for all Democrats, for hope all around the world. He was created to stop tyranny, and the idea of stopping tyranny is important today as it was then. Later, after the election of US President Barack Obama said the idea of change and hope has permeated the country regardless of politics, and that includes Hollywood. Discussions in all their development meetings includes the zeitgeist and how it's changed in the last 2 weeks. Things are being adjusted. The filming began on April 2010. Joe Johnston describes it as Rick Hendricks is production designing and they're set up down the Manhattan Beach, California. And he also says the invaders will appear in the entire second half of the film, which leads to fans speculate this was World War II era. Marvel superhero team of that name. There was also speculations that Namor to appear. The design as a whole tried to create technology that could be built in 1940s, though with the added cube technology in Hydra's case, abandoned Nazi projects or actual vehicles from the period were used as inspiration. Daniel Simon, who helped designing many vehicles in Tron Legacy, was appointed lead vehicle designer. Johnston said Simon's book Cosmic Motors as a reason to trust his influence, saying he's sort of the guy he wanted to be when he was designing stuff for Star Wars. Those characters from previous films returned. Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, is played by Chris Evans, and I think he did a splendid job. A human that got himself a super soldier serum and became a superhero with a shield called Captain America. The cast who were considered for the role are Garrett Hedlund, Channing Tatum, Scott Porter, Mike Vagel, Sebastian Stan, Wilson Bethel, John Krasinski, Michael Cassidy, Chase Crawford, White Russell, and Jen Ackles. Sam Worthington and Will Smith were in talks, and Kellen Lutz, Ryan Phillip, and Alexander Skarsgård auditioned. Chris Evans, who previously played Human Torch in the Fantastic Four films, almost turned down the role, but his good friend Robert Downey Jr. convinced him to take it and said if the movie bombs, he's if the movie hits, he's He was scared. He realised that his whole decision-making process was fear-based, and you never want to make a decision out of fear, and I'm so glad he took it. Linda Dini is a body double in some shots for Steve Rogers, pre-transformation physic, and also appears as a bartender, and I think the effects is pretty effective. Hayley Atwell plays Agent Peggy Carter, who's an agent of Strategic Scientific Reserve in World War II, and one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's perfect, she's badass, especially as Captain Carter in What If and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Atwell has been training 6 days a week to make her a bit more military and make it convincing that she could kick butt, and said she likened her character to that famous Ginger Rogers quote, "She can do everything Captain America can do, but backwards and in high heels. She's an English soldier through and through. Although she always looks fabulous, she might stand there with a machine gun shooting Nazis, but she's obviously gone to the loo beforehand and applied a bit of a lipstick. She doesn't need to be rescued. That's exciting to her. Her strength," which is a nice way of putting it. Lisa gave her a spin-off TV show. Hugo Weaving played Johannes Schmidt, aka Red Skull, head of advanced weaponry of Adolf Hitler, and commander of Hydra, the terrorist organization. He's so good in this. We even said that his patent Red Skull's accent on those of Werner Herzog and Klaus Maria Brandauer, and he said the differences between Captain America and Red Skull are they both had the serum, and the serum seems to augment certain qualities that each of them have. Cap is much more in tune with other people, Schmidt is in tune with himself and his own needs and his own ego. From his point of view, they're quite opposite. Chester Phillips is played by Tommy Lee Jones, United States Army Colonel, who's the head of projects. Tommy describes Chester Phillips as one you've seen in 1,000 movies, the gruff, skeptical officer overseeing a team of talented, slightly sarcastic, specially talented soldiers, and I think he nailed it. Sebastian Stan plays James Buchanan, or Bucky Barnes as we call him, is Steve's best friend and United States Army Sergeant, who was killed in action but got made into a brainwashed assassin with metal arm called the Winter Soldier. He's fantastic. What can I say that hasn't been said already? Sebastian Stan was rumoured to play Captain America but got casted as Bucky instead, and said that he did not know anything about the comic books but watched a lot of documentaries and films about World War II in preparation for the role, calling Band of Brothers very helpful. He also said Steve Rogers and Bucky are both orphans and kind of like brothers. They kind of grow up together and look after each other, and it's a very human, relatable thing. He also wanted to look out for how their relationship changes once Steve becomes Captain America. There's always a competition and they're always one-upping each other. He had paid attention to how Bucky is affected by Steve's change, and suddenly Steve is this leader. Dominic Cooper played young Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark, which I think he did a splendid job, looking like young Robert Downey Jr. Neil McDonough and Derek Luke plays Timothy Dum Dum Dugan and Gabe Jones, who are members of Rogers' Squad of Commandos. I think they're great. Stanley Tucci plays Abraham Erskine, a scientist who created the super soldier serum. What gave him the role is his opportunity to do a German accent, which was something he always wanted to try, and I think he did a great job of it. We also have Toby Jones, who plays Arnim Zola, a Nazi party, who's so good in this as well. Laura Haddock, who had a cameo where James Gunn jokingly said that she's Star-Lord's grandmother, which I like that. I think the cast in this film did an amazing job. The music by Henry Jackman is awesome. I love the opening in the snow. It's mysterious and you kind of get comic book vibes. I love the concept of Tesseract. There's amazing chemistry with Bucky and Steve as he helps him from the bullies.
on, man. Why last night?
Gotta get you cleaned up.
Why? Where we going?
Future.
And we get a cool cameo of Jenna Coleman. This is a year before she was casted as Clara Oswald in Doctor Who. David Bradley is in the film as well, which is cool. Poor Steve, who couldn't join the army, but at least we get an iconic scene where he took the super soldier serum and gets himself a muscles and grown bigger. What I love about Steve in his costume on the stage with the dancers in the film is that they made it look 1940s, which is well done.
Who's strong and brave, here to save the American?
And also that black and white film kind of reminds me of the very first Marvel film, Captain America, that came out in 1944, starring Dick Purcell. Captain America's stealth was pretty intense. I like the hats he was wearing. It does remind me of concept art of Marvel Ultimate Alliance game, which is cool. The mask ripping off to reveal Red Skull is effective. And I think both versions of Red Skull, Hugo Weaving and Scott Pauling, are pretty terrifying. I love Stanley's cameo in this.
I thought he'd be taller.
It was also effective where Peggy shoots the metal shield. There's fantastic action with Captain America.
When Captain America throws his mighty shield.
The fight with Red Skull is a blast. And it's really emotional that Steve Rogers sacrificed himself by crashing the plane and Peggy thinks he's going to die. Plus he's got a dance to do. But at least he did eventually. The bit where Steve Rogers woke up and ran outside of New York City 70 years later. His acting is spot on.
You've been asleep, Cap, for almost 70 years. You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I had a date.
I love the fact that they put the Avengers trailer for the after credits scene. I think it's perfectly linked to the Avengers, and I think it's a brilliant film. Time to assemble because we're now on to the Avengers.
When Captain America throws his mighty shield. Of those who chose to oppose